Hi, welcome to Backstage. I'm your host, Jax Resto, here at WKDW Radio 97.5 FM in Northport, Florida. Today's Backstage topic is why not now, right? I am backstage with Chris Day, lead singer for Shore Patrol out of what, Cape Coral?
Cape Coral.
Cape Coral. Wow, so you came quite a distance here to talk with us.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate that. Thanks for traveling all this way to talk to us, Chris. And I have a few questions that I prepared. So we're going to wing it too. So if you want to talk about something that I haven't addressed, then feel free. Okay. But I often hear people say things like this, and this has happened to me especially when I've been performing. People have said, "Oh, I always wanted to play the drums," or "I always wanted to be in a band." I say, "Well, why not now?" And they'd say, "Oh, I'm too old." And then they'd tell me how old they were, and they were younger than me. So, looking at you, you look great. You look great. But I know you're not in your 20s or your 30s, and we're going to stop there. Okay, because we're all forever 39, and maybe some of us are 29. But yeah, you actually took the why not now approach. So tell us about that.
It was interesting. Ever since I was a kid, I've always wanted to be in a band, like every other person on the planet probably at some point in their lives. And I always liked to sing. You put the headphones on and you sing in the car. Even back in the 90s, I lived in Florida on the East Coast, and I started karaoke. Just because I enjoyed singing. Well, there's all the challenges that come with that, standing in front of a microphone for the first time. So I never had any real formal training, so I was always a little bit apprehensive about, actually getting in front of a band or with a band, because the dynamics of even doing karaoke versus playing in a real band, it's 180 degrees.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. People don't realize that either.
Yeah. So there was an extreme apprehension about just trying it and failing, trying it and worrying about what people thought. And I think part of it was just I felt my life was getting in the way. I was raising a family, all the things that go on in your life. It wasn't until about 5 years ago that I was working I worked at a company in the Philadelphia area. It was a broadband communication company. The folks in there were all engineers, and they all belonged to bands. And we got together just to do an event there. And then people heard me sing because they would invite people up to sing. So I decided to do it. And then from there, they started asking me to join them in other little events. So we had a larger event we were doing. That got canceled, but we had spent about 2 months practicing. So all the folks there individually were saying, well, why don't we just go out and start gigging since we've already been, rehearsing together. So we all got together, realized that we were all singing at the same time, but in separate areas. So we did. We started going out and just playing in gigs.
You already had all your band members together at this point, but this is a different band though, right?
This is a different band, yeah.
Okay.
This is how, for me, this is all kind of where it started. And again, I had never played in a band before, so I was all excited. This is literally a childhood dream. Wow, this is great. So we started going out and we started playing, but the reception was incredible in the fan base, and we were appealing to a lot of different types of age.
And how long ago was this?
This is about 5 years ago.
Okay.
But then, decided to move to Florida. And I loved it so much I wasn't going to give it up. I said, I'm here now. I've been waiting my entire life to do this. And for a lot of folks, it wasn't the same because they had been playing in bands their entire life. So when we came down here, I was determined to stay in a band. I actually put ads out on Craigslist and other places before we even physically relocated. So once I got here, found a lot of people that were really interested.
Did you find a lot of wackos?
Actually, no. I found a lot of interesting personalities, and I wouldn't call any of them wacky because it's they're individuals. I mean, for all I know, everybody thinks I'm wacky. I know one person across the room does. But the artistic ability and diversity and talent that these people have that I've met allow me to grow. I mean, because I have no young experience in this industry, I'm like a sponge. I'm literally a kid in the candy store, so I just suck up everything. There's nothing that somebody can say to me that I don't at least listen to.
So all the other members in your band now, okay, which
Yeah.
is Shore Patrol, okay, and we'll get into that a little more. Are they all around your age, or?
No, I'm actually officially the youngest person in the band
I
by
love
1
it.
week. Our
I love
drummer is
it.
a week older than I am.
I love it.
We have our oldest person, our bass player. He's 68 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, and he actually was a break about 18 years for him. Our keyboard player, he had about a 15-year break in playing music for whatever reasons. I mean, they raised
So they
a
all
family.
started younger.
They
but
all
then
started
took a break.
younger. There's some interesting stories about a couple of our members, but they all have been playing for years. And then there were a couple of them, there were gaps. And for whatever reason, they had their gaps, and then they decided to get back into it. Our bass player actually took 4 years looking for what he called the right band, because at his age, this is the last band he plans to be in. So he was looking for the right mix.
Well, did you? And that's another thing. Oh, go ahead. No, I didn't mean.
No, that's okay. So just back to that original topic is for me, I refused to get out of it. These people were looking to get back into it, right? So for me, it's a start. For them, it's sort of a rekindling or reincarnation of their previous career. So it's been interesting just listening to the stories that they have. And for me, technically, there's so much for me to learn, and I learn every day. Every time I go to rehearsal, every time we're playing out at a gig, I just learn something new, and it's fascinating.
Well,
to me.
don't you, on that note, don't you notice that there is a difference there when you are more mature, and I'm not going to say older, more mature and more experienced in life, not necessarily in what you're doing, but that you are, like you said, you're a sponge, and you want this. You want this.
Yeah.
I see with so many kids having taught. I mean, these kids show up and you wonder why they're even here, and you kind of feel like telling them, don't waste your parents' money. But of course, I would never tell them that, because, you have to take a different approach and go, okay, well, are you having fun? Even if you're just beating on the snare drum or whatever, and you're not learning anything, as long as you're having fun, it's not a waste. But when you're older, you want it, and so you work harder at it. You don't just show up and.
I can't speak for the way it was when I was younger, obviously, because I just started into this. But I don't think the passion of having fun has changed. It changes at all from people who are younger and people who are older. I think the difference is that we realize we're older, and we realize that if we're going to do it, we better get started, or we better get back into it. When you're younger, I think the reasons why you do it are a little different.
Right.
Maybe you had that delusions of grandeur, you're going to make it big and become a Hollywood star, or a rock star or whatever. Now, for me, it's just about getting out there and having fun. It's not about money. I mean, I have a full-time job. I have a career. Most of the guys, or half the guys in our band, are retired. The priorities are a little different. But I think the passion of the art is the same.
Right. But I mean, the whole attitude in general, because I've been in business long, not as long as a musician, but even that fairly long enough to know.
Right, because you play drums.
Long enough to know that just sometimes when people show up, like my policy is I practice at home. I learn the music at home. Even though I'm a drummer, people think, it's so easy to just go in there and just sit down and play drums. It's not. If you don't know the music and the nuances and all that, to play it right, to be tight, you have to know the song. So, I practice at home so that when we get together, that's rehearsal. But I find that's not the mentality of a lot of people. A lot of people just kind of show up and then, okay, how's this go? So what are your experiences of that?
That's becomes a topic of discussion all the time when we're rehearsing. When we get into the studio, we get into the normal arguments a lot of bands would get into. We do focus on preparation. Our band really wants to be what I'm going to call a step above those types of bands who are just slapping music together to go out and play and make some dollars. Money is not the issue. Compensation for a job well done is always an issue, because we deserve what we deserve. Right. But it's not the driving factor. I'm not out there trying to pay bills with what I make. Right. And that might be the difference between somebody who's younger trying to make it big, right? They're homeless musician, right? Term that you always hear. But I think there's for us it's still a discipline, and we still come in and we have to focus on doing it right. And maybe that's part of the maturity thing that you were referring to earlier. Taking
pride in what you do, even if it's not for money.
Yeah, right. Because the only thing you have left is your reputation. Right. And so my entire business career is all based on my reputation. So I don't mind making mistakes. I don't mind admitting to my mistakes, and that might be a difference when you get a little bit more mature, as you put it. But the age factor and being older, which I don't mind admitting that I'm older now. I mean, I'm in my 50s. I'm getting into the upper 50s now. But I still feel like I'm 20 years old. There's physical limitations to what I do, but the mental side of it, I don't think is really any different from somebody who's younger. You still have the passion and the drive, but the reasons behind it might be a little different. Right. I'm not, again, I'm not there to make money. I'm just there to have fun and entertain people. I actually posted something on Facebook, I forget how long ago that was, that I don't do it because I'm looking to be the center of attention. Lead singers always have a stigma. I do it because I really just I love the fact that when I see a reaction from somebody who looks up at you and reacts to something you've done. I don't play an instrument, so if somebody's beating on the drums or hitting that right note on the keyboard, you might get a reaction. When you're holding the microphone out and you look at somebody and they look back and they got a big smile on their face, it's like, I just made somebody's night, even if it's only for 5 minutes. That's my drive. That's what gets me up in the morning to go play music.
And what was the reaction of your family and friends? Did they think at this point where they're like, oh, you're silly or you're crazy or what?
No.
Or were they supportive and just...
I have had 115% support. I don't know where I came up with the 15, but I've had 100. I mean, I just had overwhelming support. All my family.
So they've got that same mentality. Why not now, right? I love it.
Mick Jagger, right? He's touring again. He's been touring for a couple of years. The man's 72
band that
years
never
old.
Dies.
Just he's fathering a child in his 70s, and I see him on stage bouncing around. And I'm like, man, if somebody in their 70s has that much energy and that much potential to stay with it, and it doesn't matter which reasons, you just see them up on stage and you like watching them entertain. But I'm like, if I can do that, I'm 56 years old, and if I can do that when I'm in my 70s, I'm there.
Yeah.
Because it's if I can sit here and enjoy watching it, why can't I enjoy doing it for other people?
Sure. What is your day job, and how does it complement or conflict with what you do?
I'm very fortunate because I work full time out of my house.
Oh,
nice. My company has been very accommodating, but I'm basically a technical support engineer for a broadband communications company. We make cable equipment, cable modems, set-top boxes for cable TV. So everything that I do, I can be in my house. All I need is a computer and an internet connection, and I'm fine.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's great. If anything, it actually enhances my ability to be able to play in a band.
Gives you flexibility.
Yeah. I don't have commute times to worry about, other than how long does it take me to get my cup of coffee in the morning. Even then, and most of that really wouldn't be a factor if I had to drive an hour back and forth to work. In fact, when I was living back up in Philadelphia, I had about a 20-25 minute commute. But that didn't stop me going to rehearse. Actually, I was fortunate enough because since we all worked together, we went down into a big conference room in the bottom floor of our building and just set up and started playing.
So where do you rehearse now?
We rehearse at a studio in Cape Coral.
Oh, nice. That you pay for?
We pay for it, but
kind of chip in?
Yeah, everybody pitches in a couple dollars and it works out really well.
So the drums are already there?
There's a drum kit there.
That's a key thing.
It doesn't cost us a lot of money. Everybody is willing to put out
it's
a few
nice to have a
dollars.
Neutral place, I think, less distract you, focus on what you came there to do. Sometimes when you go to someone's house, there are all these distractions. That person, I got to put my laundry in the dryer.
Yeah, or the laundry's going while you're trying to rehearse, right?
So here with the radio station, I think season 1 we were recording at someone's home, and there were just so many distractions, and I could see most of my cast were teenagers, and I could just see it just wasn't that professional setting really makes a difference. And I stepped it up season 2 when we came here and recorded everything, and you could see the difference in the way people behave. I don't know, it's just like a psychological thing.
There is. I mean, we had before our current drummer, for a short time we had another drummer, and we actually went to his house and rehearsed, and he had several drum kits in his family room. But it's a different atmosphere when you're rehearsing in a house versus at
the mood is different.
It does.
Into someone's home, and you see the first thing you see when you walk in the door is shoes and
I actually stood by the kitchen sink with a microphone because it just physically wasn't enough to set up.
It does. It somehow, I think, mentally, when you walk into a studio, your game is on. You step it up even without realizing, because you're in a professional setting, especially if you're paying, even if it's not a lot. You're paying for that time.
Yeah,
so,
and that's a big difference between, I think, when you're younger and when you're older. Especially the younger kids who don't have jobs, or they have this, they're trying to make it big, the homeless musician thing. $10, $20, $30 for every time you have a recording session is a lot when you're really not bringing in a lot. There's a lot of people who don't realize how much of an effort it is to put in just to prepare, between the rehearsal time and that's rehearsal time in the studio. Then you have all, like you said, you have all the prep time at home, right, to learn the arrangements of a song. In my case, learning the lyrics, getting familiar with the song. We had our last band, our keyboardist, he was from a jazz gospel background, so he didn't know what rock was. He didn't know who Foreigner was. He didn't know all those classic rock artists. So he had to learn not only the music and the arrangements, but he had to learn how to be rock and roll.
Yeah. When I started, I'd never played with a band. I was just playing drums for fun. And then somebody said, "Oh, you want to play with us?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." And you don't have that same confidence because it's a completely different thing than, "Oh, I've been playing with these CDs all this time and I thought I was great, but now you're playing with live people and it's not the same." It is different. And then I think when you play with different people, it's you try to learn a song, you try to learn it just like the CD, but then you're playing with live people.
Yep.
Even if they all play it and they all learned it with the CD, it's still different.
And that's the difference between karaoke, or anything associated with that, right? Just playing off a recording versus doing things live. And me and my bass player, Doug, we had this conversation all the time. In fact, that becomes a point of contention when we're doing cover music, right? Because you have to learn something. So what you do is you go to YouTube, and you download an MP3 of it, and then that's what you practice to. And if you're really rigid about learning it that way, you go into the studio and everybody's got their own personality they put into their instruments, right? So you try to bring that together. It just sounds completely different than learning it. And that was a huge change for me starting into it versus somebody who's been doing it for years, even coming back into it because they have that experience. I never had that experience. The structure of this interview, that's a really big, interesting point between all the other members of the band and myself, right? I don't have any of that to fall back on, saying, back when I was
Sometimes
your
it's
age.
Good, though.
Well, it is good. It's refreshing.
You don't have all that. You're not jaded.
No, but I feel very intimidated some days.
Yeah.
I walk into a group of musicians, whether it was whatever the band is, they all had a history. And down here in Southwest Florida, there just seems to be a huge presence of the old regime of rock stars and musicians that have made it big and have albums, and you run into them all the time. I know people that, we lived up in the Tampa area before we moved here for about 8 months looking for a place, and we finally found paradise here in Cape Coral. But, Kansas, I forget what other bands are up in that area. They live in that area, but you run into these types of people all the time. I hear all the time bands down in the Cape Coral area playing out, and they said, this guy from this band was here, and we got to sit and talk to them, and they show you pictures.
Yeah, Sarasota, there's some too.
Sarasota's another big area, right. I just think it's really interesting when you have people with that background, for me coming back into it, that I am so happy that I did it and I didn't wait any longer. But there is a big piece of it is the support factor. I mean, if you don't have people backing you, especially in your own house, then you're just not going to have the motivation, and you're going to second guess whether you're doing the right thing, and how it affects the household. So support at home is just everything.
Absolutely.
It really is.
Absolutely. All right, one last question. Let's see if I can remember. You made me forget what I was going to ask you. When you play, because you are a cover band, do you take a lot of time to cover it as if you were a tribute band, or do you just kind of do your own thing and just learn the basics and then just, okay, we're going to play it the way we want to play it?
Whenever I go out and I listen to a band, one of the things that, or even when you go to see a concert and you see the actual artist performing, they throw some completely different spin on the song.
Right, exactly.
I fell in love with the song, how I listened to it on the album. And so, that's the way I want to hear it when I go out. When I go out to see a cover band or any kind of a band doing a tribute bands especially. Tribute bands, you expect to hear it the way it was done to the original, even down to the sound, the dress, everything else. But for us, one of our internal mantras is we want to be a tribute type band, but still know that we're doing covers of songs. So everybody's going to bring their own influence into the song, but we still want to maintain the essence of the song, because when we perform, we want people to hear it the way they remembered it. We always like to play songs that everybody knows but nobody hears. So when we play that song, we want to make sure that they're hearing it the way they want to hear it.
Right.
And because our best reaction is when somebody comes up to us and say, "Man, I haven't heard that song in forever, and it sounded great."
Give me an example of some of those songs you're talking about.
Oh gosh, we do from the '60s. We do "Secret Agent Man" from John
I
Rivers.
love that song.
Yeah,
I know all the words.
Yeah, and that goes back into some of the bubblegum, not bubblegum, but some of the ones that wouldn't be considered rock and roll. Rockabilly.
TV theme song.
Yeah, but we'll do Rock and Roll Fantasy from Bad Company, Long Train Running, Can't Go For That from Hall & Oates.
Okay.
We do Tracy Chapman, Give Me One Reason.
Okay, yeah, I like that song.
Right, but so if you do, there's certain songs that you can get away with changing a little bit, but other ones, if you don't do it like the record or like the original recording, at least not 80-90%, and give it that real and the intensity of the song, and really pay tribute to it, because that's why you're doing it. You're paying tribute to the song.
Otherwise, you just to go in your car and turn on your radio and you go listen to your music there.
Right,
you come to hear us do it. You want to hear us do it right.
Right, unless you're going to change it completely and I'm going to do this song in a reggae genre.
I was just going to say that.
That's different. But when you're trying to say, I want to, I actually rehearsed with a band one time, and they were putting some kind of flair or grunge to every song. It was Pink Floyd. I recall the time they were putting grunge to Pink Floyd. It didn't sound it almost sounded like they were trying to turn it into an AC/DC song. And you can't do that to a song like that. It's not